Barry was always, from the beginning, I think he had a big crush on me. The delightful young man with these big green eyes who, and great big hands and feet. He hadn't grown into himself, kind of awkward and gangly and always tripping over himself.
50 years after the Brady Bunch first aired, fans are still fascinated by the show and its beloved cast. But behind the scenes, there were more than just sibling rivalries and heartwarming moments. Over the years, rumors of cast romances swirled, and now Barry Williams, who played Greg Brady, has confirmed some of those long-held suspicions. Barry Williams and Florence Henderson, the unexpected date. One of the most surprising stories to emerge from the Brady Bunch set involves Barry Williams and Florence Henderson. As Williams grew up on the show, he developed a strong admiration for Henderson, who played his on-screen mother, Carol Brady. In his autobiography, Growing Up Brady, Williams admitted he asked Henderson out on what he considered a date when he was just 16 years old. Reflecting on the evening, Henderson later clarified the nature of the outing, saying, quote, "Barry did have a serious crush on me, which I understood and helped him get past. Let me say here that if he had been older and there weren't quite so many years between us, I might have gone for it. He was, and still is, an attractive guy." For Williams, the dinner at the Coconut Grove was a chance to spend time with someone he deeply admired, while for Henderson it was more of a nurturing gesture. She viewed it as a sweet, motherly act to let the young actor experience a bit of attention from his crush. Though the public reaction was one of shock when the story first emerged, both Williams and Henderson handled the situation with grace, making it clear there was never any inappropriate dynamic. Despite the age gap, the relationship remained strictly professional, and their bond continued to be one of mutual respect and affection throughout the years. Barry Williams and Maureen McCormick, the rumored fling.
I wasn't in regular school. My classes were coming from my public schools, but I was studying by myself or with Maureen McCormick, in a room with a private tutor. I wasn't going to the Friday night football games. I wasn't hanging out. I wasn't, just going on a date. I was always working.
For years, fans of the Brady Bunch speculated about a potential romance between Barry Williams and Maureen McCormick, who played Marcia Brady. Unlike the playful and wholesome sibling rivalry that their characters had on screen, the off-screen chemistry between Williams and McCormick was something quite different. In her memoir, Here's the Story, McCormick confirmed the two did share a brief romantic fling, adding, quote, "It was our first experience kissing anyone. You can't tell me those kisses weren't real. There was something going on between us." The connection between the two wasn't just an isolated crush. It blossomed during the height of their popularity on the show. As teenagers, they were navigating the pressures of fame while dealing with typical adolescent feelings. Williams later admitted to People magazine, quote, "It was a mutual attraction, but more playful than serious. The attraction came to life in moments when the cameras weren't rolling, and they found themselves drawn to each other during filming breaks. But their short-lived romance had its complications. As their characters had to continue acting as siblings on the show, both actors had to keep their feelings under wraps, something McCormick called a little awkward but also exciting. Despite the real chemistry, the relationship never evolved into anything more significant, remaining a sweet teenage fling. Years later, both actors fondly looked back on the time with no regrets. As McCormick reflected in an interview, "We were just two kids who happened to be playing brother and sister. It was innocent, it was sweet, and it was brief." Maureen McCormick and Christopher Knight. Another rumored romance that captured the imagination of the Brady Bunch fan base involved Maureen McCormick and Christopher Knight, who played Marcia and Peter Brady. While their characters shared a typical sibling relationship on screen, off-camera rumors suggested there might have been a romance between the two. Although McCormick and Knight have never fully confirmed a romantic relationship, the speculation grew over the years due to their undeniable chemistry and playful interactions during filming. In her memoir, McCormick touched briefly on the subject, explaining that she and Knight had a close bond, but left the door open to interpretation regarding whether it went further. "Chris and I had a strong connection, but we were both so young and focused on the show. There wasn't time for much else." Similarly, Knight has spoken in interviews about the closeness of the cast, noting, "We were like a real family in many ways, but everyone thinks there was something more going on." The rumor likely gained steam because fans often look for romantic tension behind the scenes when actors play close relationships on screen. For McCormick and Knight, however, the relationship appears to have been more about friendship and camaraderie than anything romantic. But recently, Barry Williams was quoted as saying, "We all hooked up with each other at some point, not necessarily while we were filming." So he might have not been talking about these two, but it's certainly possible. Susan Olsen and Mike Lookinland, childhood crushes. While the older Brady siblings were the focus of much of the romantic speculation, the youngest cast members, Susan Olsen and Mike Lookinland, who played Cindy and Bobby Brady, had their own innocent love story. During the show's run, both were still children, and as often happens when kids spend a lot of time together, a small crush developed between them. Years later, Olsen openly discussed this, saying, quote, "Mike was my first real crush. We were about 8 or 9 years old, and he was my little boyfriend on set." Their bond was sweet and harmless, a typical childhood infatuation that didn't go unnoticed by their co-stars or the show's crew. Olsen recalled with a laugh, "It was very innocent, more like I like you, you like me, and that was the extent of it." The crush may have been mutual, but like many childhood romances, it never went beyond a few shy interactions during breaks between filming. Lookinland, who was notoriously shy, reflected on his friendship with Olsen, describing her as the little sister I never had. Though the relationship never ventured beyond a schoolyard crush, it left a lasting impression on both of them. As adults, they often joke about their early onset romance. Olsen later said, quote, "It was all very innocent and cute, but I guess fans wanted to imagine something bigger." The lightheartedness of the connection added another layer to the complex relationships among the Brady Bunch cast. Eve Plum and Christopher Knight. Another potential romance that has intrigued Brady Bunch fans for years involves Eve Plum, who played Jan Brady, and Christopher Knight, better known as Peter Brady. While much of the cast had their rumored relationships, the idea of Eve and Christopher sharing a romantic connection seemed to stir particular curiosity, especially given their contrasting personalities both on and off screen. Unlike some of the other Brady pairings, however, this one remains more in the realm of speculation than confirmed fact. There have been whispers throughout the years that the two may have shared a brief romance during the show's production. In interviews, Plum has been tight-lipped about her personal relationships on set, choosing instead to focus on the camaraderie of the cast as a whole. She once remarked, "We were all close, but it was really more like a family environment than anything romantic. People like to think there was more happening, but most of us were just trying to do a job." Knight, on the other hand, has been slightly more open to addressing the rumors, though he's neither confirmed nor denied any romantic involvement with Plum. In an interview from the early 2000s, he said, "I can see why people think there was something there. We did have great chemistry, but sometimes people read too much into things." Barry Williams' romantic life outside the Brady Bunch.
I didn't have time for him.
Yeah, right?
Tagging along, doesn't know what's up. He's not even a good wingman at that point.
While much of the romantic speculation about Barry centers around his relationships with his Brady co-stars, his life outside the show has been just as intriguing. After becoming a teen heartthrob, he found himself in the public eye, and his dating life quickly became a topic of interest. He embraced the attention and over the years had several high-profile relationships. In his autobiography, Growing Up Brady, he shared candid details about his love life post-Brady Bunch. He dated actress and singer Natalie Schafer, known for her role as Mrs. Howell on Gilligan's Island, a relationship that surprised many due to their significant age gap. Beyond that, his romantic life included more conventional relationships as well. He was briefly married to actress Diane Martin, though that didn't last long. He later married Isla Mary Matt in the 1990s, with whom he has a son. His second marriage, however, also ended in divorce. In a 2016 interview, he opened up about his struggles with relationships and how fame has influenced his personal life, saying, quote, "It's tough. When you're known as Greg Brady, people have this image of who you're supposed to be, but real life is a lot more complicated than that." Now it's time to hear from you. Who is your favorite Brady Bunch character? Let us know in the comments section below. Coming home from school and plopping down in front of the TV to watch the Brady Bunch is a fond memory for many children of the 70s. Of course, when you're a kid, you're consumed by the stories on the screen. You never thought about those actors having real lives. Well, we're here to tell you the goody two-shoes Bradys experienced as much drama off-screen as they did on. From getting down and dirty under the covers in bedroom scenes to crushes on each other, the Brady family, or at least the actors who played them, were far more naughty than you could have imagined. Keep watching to learn all the juicy details about the Brady Bunch scandals, guaranteed to shock even the most die-hard fan. Greg Brady had a crush on his TV mom. Barry Williams, who played the oldest Brady kid Greg, was the first to admit he had a crush on Carol Brady actress Florence Henderson. And it turns out the infatuation was more than a schoolboy crush. Williams and Henderson went out on a date, even though he was just 15 and she was 36. The newly minted couple even shared a kiss on the lips at the end of the night. However, according to Henderson, she had no idea the dinner was a date in the first place. Williams said of the affair he didn't seek to, quote, bed her, he just wanted to spend time with her. His co-stars even remember him referring to Henderson as a totally white-hot babe. The funny thing is, the so-called date had to be escorted by Williams' older brother because the younger Brady didn't even have his license yet. Real-life partners Barry Williams and Tina Mahina. Barry Williams was said to have loved his time on the Brady Bunch as teen heartthrob Greg Brady. Sadly, he wasn't able to reproduce the Brady success story after the sitcom was canceled, though not for lack of trying. He turned to theater, landing roles in popular stage productions like The Sound of Music, West Side Story, and Grease. He even had success as an author with his 1990s autobiography Growing Up Brady, landing on the New York Times bestseller list. Williams has been married 3 times. His first was with Diane Martin, but that lasted 2 years. Later, he married Isla Mary Matt, and the couple had a son, Brendan Eric. That partnership ended in 2005. Today, he's married to American hula dancer Tina Mahina. The couple celebrated their wedding in 2017 when Williams was 62. The Fizz Fizzle Jan and Peter's romance. For a PG show, the Brady Bunch was more X-rated than the producers would ever let on. Christopher Knight, the actor behind Peter Brady, was known to have dated his on-screen sister Jan, played by Eve Plum. The rumor goes they were going steady for some time before they were caught fooling around in the back of Knight's pickup truck. And not just by anyone. It was the police who asked them to roll down their windows. Sadly, the incident spelled the end of their romance, though onlookers at the time said the union looked to be going to the next level before the duo was so rudely interrupted. Hey, if you're enjoying this video so far, make sure you give it a like and subscribe to Factsverse if you haven't already. Real-life partners Christopher Knight and Adrian Curry. Christopher Knight had a fun role on the Brady Bunch. He got to embody the goofy, fun-loving, and sometimes clumsy Peter Brady. Once the sitcom ended, Knight stayed out of the limelight. Aside from a few guest appearances, including one time he battled it out with the Partridge Family's Danny Bonaducci as a pro wrestler, he quit acting and started a career in computing. As a self-described geek, it seemed he'd finally found his true passion. Like his older Brady sibling, Barry Williams, Knight struggled to hold down a marriage. After 2 unsuccessful marriages, he famously wed Adrian Curry, winner of America's Next Top Model. The tabloid press went wild with the fact that there was a 25-year age gap between them. This was in 2006, and the couple divorced just 5 years later. In 2016, he married his 4th wife, Kara Kokanis. Marsha, or Maureen McCormick, and Barry Williams. Apparently, Barry Williams, who played Greg, had a thing for his on-screen sister Marsha, Maureen McCormick, since the show started. But since they were only 14 and 12 at the time, a relationship wasn't really appropriate. But a few years later, they were older and ready for love. According to rumors at the time, the crew had trouble filming a scene where McCormick and Williams shared a bed in the Brady home's attic because they kept getting a little too close to each other. The budding couple also shared a kiss on the beach when shooting episodes in Hawaii. McCormick later confessed in her autobiography that she had hoped to lose her virginity to Williams. But it wasn't to be. The couple broke up after the Brady Bunch producer Sherwood Schwartz convinced Williams he was far too young to get into a serious relationship. Real-life partners Maureen McCormick and Michael Cummings. To this day, Maureen is best known as the popular and pretty Marsha Brady. She was a fan favorite, and she had some on-screen success in other roles for a few years following the show's end. But not long after, McCormick fell into a long struggle with addiction to cocaine and Quaaludes. She even admitted to trading sex for drugs in her 20s. She lost a spot on Raiders of the Lost Ark when she turned up for an audition in front of Steven Spielberg, high on cocaine and having not slept for days. It wasn't until 1985, when she married her husband, Michael Cummings, that things started to look up. And it seems romance had finally found her. The couple, along with their daughter Natalie, has stayed together through thick and thin, and today live in Westlake Village, Los Angeles. Bobby and Cindy Brady engaged in doghouse dalliances. Mike Lookinland played Bobby Brady. According to Barry Williams, Lookinland would often sneak off with on-screen sister Cindy, played by Susan Olsen, to Tiger's doghouse for a session of heavy petting between takes. For those who don't remember, Tiger was the Brady family dog. But Lookinland was quick to ditch his sister for better offers after he started lusting after some of the cast's older members. Olsen once told an Australian news channel that all the Brady siblings were hooking up at one point. Real-life partners, Susan Olsen and her 2 ex-husbands. Susan Olsen played the cutesy, naive Cindy Brady, the youngest of the Brady girls. And most of her silver screen fame comes from the years she was on the Brady Bunch. After the show ended, Olsen moved into graphic design and worked as a radio host. In 2016, she was fired from her radio show 2 Chicks Talkin' Politics on LA Talk Radio for making homophobic comments. Despite this, she remains most widely known as a vocal animal rights activist. Olsen married and divorced twice. She tied the knot with Steve Ventimiglia in 1988, divorcing in 1990. Her marriage to her second husband, medical equipment salesman Mitch Markwell, lasted almost a decade before they split. They had 1 son together. Marcia and Jan Brady were more than just sisters. So this one is more of a rumor than anything substantiated, but here it goes. More than one Brady cast member recalls tales told of a love affair, well, a shared kiss at least, between Jan Brady and Marcia Brady. It's said this is the source of their on- and off-screen sibling rivalry. For some reason, and no one knows for sure, the 2 TV stars have been on bad terms since the 70s. For years, they would only speak to each other through Susan Olsen. The feud is so severe it's made it hard to organize cast reunion specials. The Brady Bunch ended its original run over 4 decades ago, but it still remains a huge part of popular culture. The show followed the exploits of the titular Brady family, made up of 2 widowed parents and their respective children from previous marriages. The father was Mike Brady, as played by Robert Reed, while the mother was Carol, played by Florence Henderson. One of the child stars that portrayed a member of the Brady family was Maureen McCormick, who played eldest Brady daughter Marcia Brady. This made Maureen the eldest among the show's female child actresses, and it also meant she had come of age by the time the show ended its 5-season run. Given that, she was perhaps the child star who grew to resent her time on the show the most. The Brady Bunch had a squeaky clean image, and Maureen never had a lot of respect for the innocent vision of the show. As Maureen got older, she saw she was growing up, but her character wasn't. She has shared she would have preferred for the show's writers to start incorporating some more mature storylines for the aging Brady children. According to Maureen, some of the more mature storylines she thought of that she felt would have been perfect for the series included Mike and Carol deciding to become swingers, Jan staying out all night, and her own character, Marcia, hiding a boy from her parents inside her room. Despite her wishes, the Brady Bunch's writers were insistent upon retaining the tone that had made the series a hit. Because of this, Maureen decided she was going to lash out against the show's imposing innocence a different way. Alongside fellow star Eve Plum, who played on-screen middle sister Jan, Maureen pledged not to wear a bra during filming. Both actresses showed up for filming without bras on, and that fact went unnoticed for the filming of several episodes. But series director Lloyd Schwartz eventually realized what was going on, causing him to reprimand the 2 actresses. Neither Maureen nor Eve ever showed up to set without bras again after being told off by Lloyd Schwartz. For a time, the director would even personally verify the actresses were wearing bras by placing his hand on their backs and feeling the straps, something that likely would not go down so well on the set of a show today. Though Maureen and Eve were reprimanded for not wearing bras, they thought it was worth it because it alleviated the boredom that had begun to accumulate amongst them. Besides not wearing bras, the child stars of the Brady Bunch rebelled against their innocent images on the screen in other ways behind the scenes. Maureen has shared that Barry Williams, who played Greg Brady, used to smoke marijuana on set. She also shared that it was during the filming of an episode at a theme park in Cincinnati that young actress Susan Olsen drank alcohol for the first time. Susan played youngest daughter Cindy. When the Brady Bunch finally came to an end after 5 seasons in 1974, the stars who became famous because of it struggled to make a name for themselves outside of the show. The child stars couldn't leave behind their image as the Brady children. For the aforementioned Susan Olsen, this meant getting into the pornographic industry, although not in the way you'd expect. Hey, if you're enjoying this video so far, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to Facts First for more, and stick around for more about those rebellious Brady Bunch kids. Although actresses Maureen McCormick and Eve Plum were close enough on the set of The Brady Bunch that they were able to indulge in braless hijinks together, it's long since been rumored that the two child stars never quite got along. In recent years, Eve has done her best to put these rumors to rest. But Susan Olsen, the actress who played Cindy, remains adamant the actresses who played her two elder sisters never quite had an amicable relationship. If there was any amount of negativity between the two former on-screen sisters that they'd been hiding over the course of the decades, it appears it was resolved before the two appeared together in the recent miniseries, A Very Brady Renovation. The miniseries brought all 6 former child stars from the Brady Bunch back together, and all for the special purpose of helping to renovate the house that had been used as a set on the original series. Maureen and Eve appeared to get along swimmingly, though it could be that any drama was edited out. Susan Olsen has also shared that other members of the cast didn't get along well with Maureen McCormick during the filming of The Brady Bunch due to her demanding nature. Susan shared that Maureen was always the type to criticize others for things she personally didn't like, such as eating fish. Apparently, Maureen was very offended by the smell. Long before former child star Susan Olsen reunited with her on-screen siblings for A Very Brady Renovation, she found herself unwittingly getting into the porn industry. But it wasn't as a performer, but as a sound effects artist. Her roommate was involved in the industry, and Susan had a synthesizer. Her roommate needed someone to produce spaceship sounds for a movie, and Susan's synthesizer was capable of doing it. She agreed to take the job. Because of this, it can technically be said Susan got into porn after The Brady Bunch, making her the former Brady sibling who rebelled against the show's innocent image most of all. Susan made $50 for her work on the film, which was named Love Probe from a Warm Planet. According to Susan, she suggested the name herself. The boredom and dissatisfaction the stars playing the Brady children began exhibiting towards the Brady Bunch's end was mirrored by the actor who portrayed their on-screen father. Robert Reed portrayed Mike Brady, and the actor had a background that was intimidating. Before taking the role, he had been a fairly serious actor who studied his craft for many years. He worked alongside Julie Andrews in film and was an even bigger deal on the theater stage. Several years before The Brady Bunch, Robert Reed acted in the series The Defenders. It lasted from 1961 to 65 and was a legal drama. Robert never wanted to be on The Defenders, but had taken his role on the series to pay the bills. If he found the legal drama of The Defenders to be below his talents, he found the role of Mike Brady to be even below that, although he couldn't keep himself from accepting the gig as the beloved patriarch due to the money he was going to be making. But Robert hated acting on the Brady Bunch from the beginning. This only got worse over the course of the 5-season run, to the point where he refused to participate in the series' final episode. All the child actors on the set viewed actor Robert Reed as a symbol of strength, with many of them considering him to be a real-life father figure. Though Robert treated the child actors on Brady incredibly kindly, he didn't show the same kindness to the show's production staff. He let his distaste for the show's material be known by providing numerous suggestions over the course of the series. According to director Lloyd Schwartz, Reed criticized nearly every creative decision that was made regarding the show as soon as he began his tenure, and it only got worse as the series went on. Although fans certainly missed the presence of Robert in the Brady Bunch's final episode, the production staff was likely glad to have him gone early. Robert passed away in 1992 at age 59. He suffered from alcohol problems, including during his time on the series. These likely exacerbated his abuse of the show's creative staff and made him more miserable about his job. Barry Williams filmed one episode under the influence. Like a lot of teens growing up, Barry Williams experimented with drugs. In most cases, he made sure to keep his personal and professional life very separate. He only used marijuana when he didn't have to work, because he knew it could affect his performance, and he could even get in trouble. One day, while getting high with some friends, however, Williams received a call telling him he had to show up for some last-minute filming. He announced that he truly regrets filming an episode high, but the results were quite hilarious. In the episode Law and Disorder, which aired in 1973, you can certainly see that the marijuana had quite an effect on his performance. From then on, Williams was a lot more careful about when he used illegal substances. Robert Reed was secretly gay. On TV, Robert Reed portrayed Mike Brady, the perfect father and husband to a beautiful family. In real life, however, he was different. he was secretly gay and was terrified that if his sexuality was revealed, it would ruin his career. As a result, Reed was often described as being a rather angry, sad, and frustrated man. Having to hide such an integral part of his identity was very difficult, and he was constantly filled with anxiety. A few of the actors on the show were very aware of his sexuality, but out of respect, never brought it up. Many of the actors have since explained they were partially glad his sexuality was never revealed during the time the show was on air. Homosexuality was considered very taboo at the time, and had he been publicly out as gay, it's likely most of the public would have avoided the show. Florence Henderson was notorious for her sense of humor. On screen, Florence played the rather sterile role of Carol Brady, a classic motherly figure. In real life, however, Henderson had a penchant for making rather risque jokes, which could have ruined the audience members' view of her character. Whenever she met fans of the show, she was sure to act as much like Carol Brady as she could. Behind the scenes, however, she was very fun-loving and had no qualms making dirty jokes. Cindy and Bobby used to make out. Cindy and Bobby may have been siblings on the Brady Bunch, but in real life, the actors behind those characters had a different relationship. Susan Olsen and Mike Lookinland, who played Cindy and Bobby, were quite young when the show aired, but they felt the spark of young love. In one exclusive interview, Olsen herself admitted she and Lookinland would hide in the doghouse and make out whenever cameras weren't rolling. While many of the cast members got along too well behind the scenes, not everyone had such a harmonious relationship. Stick around until the end because we're going to reveal why Robert Reed quit from the series finale of the show. And if you're enjoying this video so far, make sure you give it a like and don't forget to subscribe to Facts Verse for more. Barry Williams and Florence Henderson went on a date. Florence Henderson became the subject of a major scandal when word got out she had taken Barry Williams on a date when he was 16 and she was 36, as well as married with children. However, the entire affair wasn't actually an affair at all. Barry Williams had really looked up to Henderson and wanted to spend time with her. While he may have had some romantic feelings for the older woman, Henderson had no such intent. She had a fun time eating dinner with him, but nothing happened outside of that meal, and she later explained in an interview she was simply humoring him. Sadly, when the tabloids got a hold of the fact she had eaten dinner with her young co-star, her reputation took a huge hit. Maureen McCormick turned to a life of addiction. Maureen McCormick was incredibly young while filming The Brady Bunch, but portraying such a perfect and sweet character like Marcia Brady filled her with a lot of worries and insecurities. As a result, after the show wrapped, McCormick began using drugs to deal with her depression. She went to parties at the Playboy Mansion and became even more addicted to cocaine and various other drugs. It wasn't until the mid-'80s that she finally came out of her drug-induced haze and got some help. After cleaning up her act, McCormick wrote a very personal memoir detailing her struggles with depression and drug abuse. Barry Williams and Maureen McCormick dated. Even though Barry Williams and Maureen McCormick played brother and sister, Greg and Marcia, on The Brady Bunch, they actually had a romantic relationship behind the scenes. The two were very close in age and spent a lot of time together filming, so it's only natural they developed feelings. The first time the two kissed, McCormick couldn't help but think to herself, "Oh my God, I'm kissing my brother, what am I doing?" Eventually, the two broke up, but the charming relationship between the two young lovers remained a juicy bit of gossip behind the scenes for a long time. Why Robert Reed refused to film the last episode. Reed was a classically trained actor who was especially known for his work in Shakespeare. As a result, he had a very different idea of what constituted good comedy than the creator and producer of the show, Sherwood Schwartz. Throughout the show, Reed was unamused by many of the show's gags and constantly tried to get more serious storylines to air. Of course, what was popular at the time was silly, lighthearted fun, and his ideas didn't usually go over well. These constant clashes with Schwartz finally came to a head during the series finale. Much of the plot revolves around Greg being about to graduate from high school and accidentally getting his hair dyed orange as a result of a prank. Robert Reed felt the storyline too cheesy and demanded it be rewritten. He threatened to refuse to show up for the finale, and the producer instead divided up all his written lines between the other characters. An infuriated Reed made no appearance on the iconic show's finale. The Brady Bunch was a hit sitcom that premiered in 1969 and revolved around the premise of two widowed parents, each with 3 children of the corresponding gender, getting married and forming a new, exceptionally large family. Series creator Sherwood Schwartz claimed he came up with the idea for the sitcom after reading a piece in the LA Times. He claimed that the bit of text that inspired him to come up with the idea was only 5 lines long, but it was enough for him to create a series that lasted for 5 seasons. Upon its premiere, The Brady Bunch became a fairly big success, but the show began waning in popularity slightly during its final seasons. Robert Reed played Mike Brady, the patriarch of the Brady family. Robert had some ideas about why the Brady Bunch wasn't faring so well in the ratings, and some ideas about how he thought the show should be run. He was the pickiest when it came to his criticisms of the show's scripts, but he was far from being the only cast member of the Brady Bunch who had issues with the direction of the series. Several other of the show's stars, including young Maureen McCormick, expressed their frustration at the fact the show seemed to be treading water creatively during its final seasons. Like Robert Reed, Maureen had ideas about how the series might evolve in future seasons, but the creative staff wasn't interested in their ideas. Robert and Maureen wanted the Brady Bunch to become more radical. Both would have preferred for the show to challenge audience members more and incorporate more adult storylines as the children got older. Although the creative staff of the Brady Bunch had certainly started feeling a great deal of boredom with the direction the series was going in its final years, they were neither willing nor allowed to shake things up as much with the show's format as the stars would have liked. Robert Reed's distaste for the show's direction got so bad that the actor had to be written out of the series' final episode. That was called The Harebrained Scheme, and it featured a plot revolving around the character of Bobby selling older brother Greg a hair tonic that turns the elder brother's hair orange just before his high school graduation. Upon receiving the script, Robert balked at the notion that hair tonic could possibly turn someone's hair orange. For his part, creator Sherwood Schwartz claimed he had fact-checked the storyline and found it was indeed possible. The final episode was the 22nd episode of the show's 5th season, and few involved expected the episode to be the show's last. It was the 117th episode overall, and ratings were dwindling by the time it aired. Besides Bobby and his hair tonic, the episode also followed daughter Cindy as she attempted to breed a pair of rabbits, only to find out both of them are boys. Given the surprise nature of the Brady Bunch's cancellation, none of the characters on the series were given ceremonious send-offs during the final episode. If the Brady Bunch had been renewed for a 6th season, Mike Brady would have either been written off the show or Robert Reed would have been recast. Robert's distaste with the harebrained scheme and general direction of the series wasn't the only reason the Brady Bunch didn't end up making it past 5 seasons, but the actor's criticisms certainly didn't help matters. Today's video is sponsored by Keeps. If you're anything like me, you've struggled to keep a full head of hair. 2 out of 3 men will experience hair loss by the time they're 35. But it doesn't have to be that way. Keeps is a subscription service that helps men like us keep our hair. They offer clinically proven, research-backed treatments to stop hair loss and improve hair growth. And most of their customers notice results within 6 months of starting. With Keeps, you can get quality, expert care without ever visiting a doctor's office or pharmacy. All Keeps treatment plans are doctor recommended and delivered straight to your door at about half the cost of a traditional pharmacy. It's time to stop stressing over your hair loss. Hair loss stops with Keeps. To get 50% off your first order, go to keeps.com/factsverse or click the link in the description. That's KEEPS.com/factsverse. The main reason the show didn't go on was that the cast had only been signed on for 5 seasons, and the creation of a 6th would have entailed potentially costly renegotiations of their contracts. Given the fact the show's ratings weren't what they had been, the network decided that forming new contracts and continuing the Brady Bunch wasn't worth it. Hey, if you're enjoying this video so far, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to Facts First for more, and stick around for more about the Brady Bunch's last episode. Robert Reed expressed his negative feelings towards the plot of the Brady Bunch's final episode in a memo to Sherwood Schwartz. Doing that was a common practice for the star, as he'd made a habit of being overly critical at the series' various plot lines and generally stagnant trajectory. When Robert sent his memo to Sherwood, he had likely expected the creator was going to bend over backwards to change the episode's plotline to please him. But by that point, Sherwood had grown tired of Robert's increasing demands. Once it became clear changes weren't going to be made, Robert had his agent call up Sherwood and tell him the star wasn't planning to participate in the filming of the episode. Robert was sure he'd get his way, but Sherwood ended up simply writing the character of Mike Brady out of the episode. This reportedly led to some uncomfortable interactions on set. as Robert showed up to watch the show being filmed, even though he had no intention of taking part. According to Robert, he did this because he cared about the series and wanted to know how the episode was going. There was talk amongst the creative staff of having the actor physically removed from set, but this was ultimately decided against, as it would have traumatized the child stars who had come to view their on-screen father as a real-life father figure. They ended up convincing Robert to leave on his own volition, with the actor having no idea he had just missed out on taking part in the Brady Bunch's very last episode. Even though the Brady Bunch ended after its 5th season, the series has lived on in the hearts of audiences and has been revived in the form of various reboots and films. One of the first big revivals came not long after the cancellation of the original, with the Brady Bunch Variety Hour. It premiered in 1976, only 2 years after the original series ended. The Brady Bunch Variety Hour was technically an actual sequel series to The Brady Bunch, as it featured a plotline that took place in the same universe and continued the plot of the original series. Although the format of the show was simply musical and comedic sketches, the in-universe plotline followed the Brady patriarch quitting his job and taking his family to Hollywood to become stars. All of the original cast returned with the exception of Eve Plum. While most of the returning cast didn't prove too fond of it, this wasn't the case for Robert Reed. Although he had begun to hate his time on the Brady Bunch by the series' end, he took a much more favorable attitude when it came to filming the Brady Bunch Variety Hour. He had always preferred stage acting to acting on television. The Brady Bunch Variety Hour only lasted 1 season and didn't do very well. Nowadays, the series is viewed as a cult oddity and is made fun of more often than it's enjoyed. The Brady Bunch was also revived in the form of an animated spin-off, The Brady Kids, as well as the 1980s series The Brady Brides, which was preceded by a made-for-television reunion film called The Brady Girls Get Married. In more recent years, the films The Brady Bunch Movie and A Very Brady Sequel have helped love for the Brady Bunch carry on into the future. Barry Williams' picks. There are many memorable episodes of the show's 117-episode run, and for Barry Williams, one of his favorite is the one that inked past the taboo, which aired in 1972. He's fond of this episode because he got to work with a tarantula. Another of his favorites is Adios, Johnny Bravo. In this episode, Greg becomes a rock star and gets arrogant and swollen-headed, only to learn he was signed by the agent for his looks, not his talent. On the flip side, an episode Barry called cringeworthy is one from Season 5 called The Driver's Seat that aired in 1974. In this episode, Greg and Marcia compete in a boys versus girls style obstacle course to settle a debate about who's the better driver. The family watches Greg and Marcia as they smoothly drive in between orange cones, with Greg avoiding contact with every cone until he gets to the last one. He knocks the last one over, and Marcia is declared the winner. They agree that they're both safe drivers, and that's all that matters. Barry didn't think it was a believable storyline and wished the writers would have included some Evel Knievel-type tricks. Mike Lookinland's picks. As for Mike Lookinland, who played the youngest brother, Bobby Brady, his favorite episode included a celebrity guest star. Joe Namath was an NFL legend who played for the New York Jets and appeared on the 1973 episode Mail Order Hero. In the episode, Bobby fakes being sick to meet Namath after Cindy sends him a letter requesting a meeting due to Bobby's illness. Clearly, Mike must have been just as starstruck to meet the player as his character was. He fondly described how quiet the set got when Namath made his entrance, and he had a wonderful experience acting alongside him for the episode. Mike didn't have the easiest time after the show, though, as he struggled with the fame of being a child star and almost succumbed to alcoholism. Like many other child actors in the biz, he never felt he got a real childhood or a chance to be a kid. In 1997, he totaled his Ford Bronco after driving home from work in Utah. His blood alcohol level was 3 times the legal limit. Luckily, he did eventually get help and became sober. Christopher Knight's picks. Christopher Knight, who played Peter Brady, had a unique experience with all the fame that came as a result of the Brady Bunch's success. He revealed his parents forced him into acting and that he too struggled with fame and being in Hollywood. He eventually quit acting to pursue his true passions. But he loved his experience filming the 1972 episode Past the Taboo. The cast spent much of their time in Honolulu during the filming of the episode, which centered around Peter finding a tiki idol during their trip. Peter thinks it's a good luck charm, but finds out the locals consider it to be a bad omen. This becomes more apparent after bad luck consistently befalls his siblings, who took turns handling the tiki idol named Taboo. His least favorite episode was 1972's Do-Re-Mi, as he felt very left out and isolated due to being the only Brady sibling not singing in it. He went as far as to say he hated the episode. In it, Peter is left out of the singing group because he's coming into puberty and his voice is cracking. Christopher thought the storyline revolved around finding a way to make sure he didn't sing during the episode, and he felt hurt by it. Soon after the Brady Bunch and its spin-offs, Christopher stopped acting and entered into the computer software industry, where he found success. He got involved in multiple business ventures before later returning to acting to do a few small projects, one of which notably involved John Ritter. Hey, if you're enjoying this video so far, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to Facts First if you haven't already. And now back to more of the Brady Bunch cast's picks. Susan Olsen's picks. Susan Olsen played Cindy Brady, the youngest Brady sibling. One of her favorite episodes is 1973's The Subject Was Noses, mostly in part for her admiration of Maureen McCormick, who played Marcia. In the episode, Maureen had to get hit in the face with a ball but never flinched or complained, which Susan was very impressed by. Another one of her favorites is Peter and the Wolf. In this episode, Greg convinces Peter to dress and act like an older guy so he could accompany Greg on a double date. She thought it was hilarious, particularly Peter's fake mustache, which then falls off during the date. Much like Christopher Knight, another top favorite of Susan's was Pass the Taboo. Eve Plum, who played middle sister Jan Brady, also said Pass the Taboo is her personal favorite. And who doesn't love a Hawaiian getaway with cast members you consider family? On the flip side, Susan found the second season episode, The Tattletale, particularly troublesome for her in real life. Her friends had a difficult time differentiating Susan from her character Cindy. Because of this, they thought she was a real-life tattletale and isolated her in school. This was distressing for Susan, as she was so young at the time. This is the same reason she dislikes 1974's The Snooper Star. In the episode, Marcia catches Cindy reading her diary, which again leads to Susan's friends seeing her in a different light and shunning the young actress. Maureen McCormick's picks. As for Maureen McCormick, who played the oldest female sibling, Marcia, her favorite was also The Subject Was Noses. In it, Marcia gets dumped by her crush after she gets hit in the nose with a football and suffers a swollen nose. Maureen eventually became disenfranchised by the end of the show when she was an older teen. She believed it was too family-friendly by the end and wanted more mature and controversial storylines to be introduced. While the cast members were smoking, drinking, and generally maturing off-set in their own ways, the siblings maintained their innocence on the show. To quietly assert her dislike for the lack of mature storylines, Maureen started taping episodes without wearing a bra. She even convinced Eve Plum to join in with her. It was a way to rebel, but without doing anything too obvious or dramatic. Her rebellion didn't last long, though. One of the show's producers quickly caught on and made it known it was unacceptable. Maureen revealed she's always struggled to come with terms with how many people look up to her. It took her a while, but she eventually came to peace with her character and came to love and accept Marcia Brady. Despite this, she says she never watches the show. She hates watching herself and finds it weird. And she dislikes watching the show because it reminds her of some somber memories attached to that time in her life. She developed a cocaine addiction, and it cost her many opportunities. She did sober up, though, and has stayed that way for over 30 years. Mike and Carol Brady. While everyone knows that Robert Reed and Florence Henderson played the roles of the Brady parents, Mike and Carol, there were a couple of other prominent actors strongly considered. Jeffrey Hunter was a handsome actor in the 1960s who nearly starred in not one, but two legendary shows. Sadly, neither worked out for him. Hunter's first near miss came when he was cast as the commander of the Starship Enterprise on the pilot episode of Star Trek. His character was Captain Christopher Pike. Unfortunately for Hunter and the rest of the people on that pilot, the network was unimpressed. They ended up scrapping the show and starting again from scratch. Of course, as we all know, the pilot was recast with William Shatner as Captain Kirk, and the rest is history. Hunter was also nearly Mike Brady, or at least he tested for the network. A column by Hollywood journalist Sidney Skolsky at the time revealed that Jeffrey Hunter had been given a serious look by the network brass, but they ultimately passed on him. Another name that was given in the article as having tested for the show was Bob Holliday. Holliday was a hunky actor who had just finished playing Superman on Broadway in a show called It's a Bird, It's a Plane, It's Superman. But the producers and network decided Holliday was not the right fit for Mike Brady either. They ended up going with Robert Reed. Diane McBain McBain was a beautiful blonde actress considered for the role of Carol Brady. McBain at one point had a contract with Warner Brothers after having been discovered acting in a high school play. She was in the movie Parish in 1961, a drama about the tobacco industry. She then acted in a slew of TV offerings, including Surfside 6 and Batman. She even played opposite Elvis in his 1966 film Spin Out. But as with Hunter and Holliday, McBain tested for the role and was not chosen. Ultimately, they went with Florence Henderson, who had been making a name for herself at that point on Broadway. Cindy Brady. Susan Olsen is known for playing Cindy Brady, the youngest of the Brady daughters. Susan was known for her adorable demeanor, as well as a propensity to wear her hair in braids or curls for the first few seasons. Susan played the part brilliantly, and she made audiences fall in love with her darling character over and over each week. And yet she almost lost out on the part to a very prominent actress, or at least she's very prominent now. On the Bravo show Watch What Happens Live with Andy Cohen, several of the former Brady Bunch actors were asked about the behind-the-scenes aspects of the show. This included Maureen McCormick, Barry Williams, Eve Plum, Susan Olsen, Christopher Knight, and Mike Lookinland. The actors were there to promote a crossover special between the Food Network and HGTV called A Very Brady Renovation Holiday Edition. This was where the old Brady abode was renovated to modernize it. During the promotional interview, Susan Olsen revealed a very juicy tidbit about her role. She nearly lost it to eventual Oscar winner and acting-directing legend Jodie Foster. Reportedly, a young Foster was in the running for the role of Cindy, but ultimately the producers and the network went with Susan. But clearly Foster's career went just fine after being rejected from this particular role. Before we tell you more, be sure to give this video a like and subscribe to Facts First if you haven't already. The grueling casting process. The casting process for a major TV show can be intense. There are always several rounds of auditions. Actors have to first prove their chops for casting assistants and casting directors, then for producers, and eventually for the studio and network. And in the later parts of the process, they have to act opposite other potential candidates. This is known as doing chemistry reads, where the top brass can see how well their potential stars match with each other in both acting style and visually. It's an exhausting process for actors and an emotional roller coaster to boot. But Brady Bunch creator Sherwood Schwartz knew that even with all that careful vetting, it can be extremely tricky to cast children. He knew that for starters, the roles of the Brady kids would be fairly intense for whatever kid actors they picked. He also knew the success of the show would rely heavily on how well the child actors did in their lead parts. One strategy Schwartz used, with great success, was to try to replicate a little of the experience on set. He knew that life on set can be incredibly distracting, sometimes boring, and overall not easy. So during the auditions with the child actors, he intentionally left toys on his desk. These were there precisely to distract the actors as they auditioned. And basically, when any of the kids were able to either look at the toys but not play with them, or ignore them completely, he would write that info down. This played a big part in choosing which kids could handle being on set. He knew if they could manage not to be distracted during the audition by fun toys, they'd be able to handle the rigors of life on a sitcom set. And Schwartz clearly didn't take the casting of the Brady kids lightly. According to the Internet Movie Database, he and the casting team auditioned 464 boys and girls in total. He later said he also wanted to make sure he got the kids' parts nailed down before casting their parents. But of chief importance were making sure the kids looked like their parents. Of course, this was tricky since he didn't yet know what the parents would look like, though clearly he had a sense already that he wanted to cast a white couple and that their hair would either be dark or blonde. Because as a safeguard, Schwartz originally cast 12 kids. He cast 6 kids with blonde hair in case the parents ended up blonde too, and he cast 6 with dark hair in case the parents ended up with dark hair. Ultimately, after casting Florence Henderson, he had to let go of the girl actors with dark hair, so Carol Brady's daughters would look like her. And after casting Robert Reed as Mike, he had to let the blonde boys go as they didn't match the hair of their dad. Certainly a tough break for those 6 kids who were nearly cast on the Brady Bunch, but their hair color held them back. The Brady kids are serial pet murderers. The Brady brood often got themselves obsessed with animals and the exciting prospect of becoming pet owners. Throughout the 5-year run of the series, the Brady kids adopted many pets. The family home could easily have been transformed into a loud, smelly zoo, but puzzlingly, the Brady pets had a tendency of vanishing into thin air. In the pilot, for example, the girls have a cat named Fluffy, who for some unexplained reason doesn't make the move with the rest of the family. The boys' dog, Tiger, on the other hand, did, but eventually he too disappeared after several episodes. Not long after Tiger's unexplained departure, when Bobby sprained his ankle and had to take it easy for a while, Mike gifted him a parakeet to keep him company. That bird only made one appearance on the show and promptly faded into oblivion pretty much immediately after being introduced. Later, Bobby briefly owned a turtle named Herman and a bunch of frogs. Cindy at one point also had a few rabbits. Greg even talks about owning a rabbit of his own in one episode, and the kids won a goldfish once at a carnival. So where did all these creatures go? After their initial appearances, the pets all seemed to blink out of existence. Either this was a side effect of how the series wasn't serialized, or the Brady kids were secretly serial animal killers. The world may never know. Hey, if you're enjoying this video so far, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to Facts First if you haven't already. And keep watching to learn what the Andy Griffith Show and the Brady Bunch had in common. Flubbing up names. It's not always an easy task to keep track of actors' and characters' names while in the heat of the moment. In the episode What Goes Up, while Peter is hopping about on a trampoline, Florence Henderson tells him to, quote, "Go get him, Chris." Later on in the same episode, Greg accidentally calls Jan Eve. The same kind of scenario unfolds in the episode Amateur Night, when the kids practice for a talent show and Marcia exclaims, "Come on, Chris." The phony sliding glass window. Here's a little blunder you can notice in several episodes, but the best example comes from the episode The Big Bet. When Bobby enters the house through the sliding glass door, the curtain flutters in the air current straight through the door frame. Turns out there's no glass in the sliding glass door. In another episode, Sam the Butcher reaches his hand through the imaginary pane and no one seems to notice. Wardrobe malfunctions. Jan had a pretty significant clothing blooper in the episode The Not So Ugly Duckling. At the start of the episode, when Jan is explaining to her parents that her crush Clark has his sights set on Marcia, she was wearing a floral patterned shirt with a red rope of yarn tied into her hair. When she headed upstairs to confront Marcia about the situation, her hair tie suddenly turned green and her shirt magically transformed into an entirely different print. What makes this especially stand out is the fact that Mike and Carol were still wearing the same thing they were wearing downstairs. There's a minor Star Trek cameo. In the episode Kitty Carryall is Missing, Cindy's favorite baby dolls disappeared. Cindy blames Bobby, who never liked the doll in the first place. To prove his sister that he cares about her, Bobby heads off to the toy store so he can purchase her a replacement. At the beginning of the scene, a storekeeper assists a mother and child. Behind him, you can clearly spot a strange little Star Trek toy from the era, the flying rocket plane, which was made by a toy manufacturer called Remco, who produced an entire line of Star Trek toys completely unrelated to the show at all. The Bradys went camping at the Andy Griffith Show pond. In the episode A Camping We Will Go, the Brady family ventures out into the wilderness to spend a weekend camping at one of their favorite spots near a serene lake. That lake locale might look especially familiar to fans of the Andy Griffith Show, the same location we used for filming of the opening credits sequence of that iconic sitcom. The Franklin Canyon Reservoir was featured as a shooting location for several episodes of The Brady Bunch, as well as in Gene Roddenberry's Star Trek. The shape-shifting station wagon. Clothing wasn't the only thing that got swapped out halfway through an episode. In the episode The Winner, Mike and Carol brought Bobby to a live televised ice cream eating contest. When they set out for the TV station, they drove there in a blue convertible, but upon returning, they're back in the family's brown station wagon. The House of Cards held together by television magic. In the episode 5440 and Fight, the Brady kids constructed a house of cards Tiger, the family dog, knocked over. Can you imagine how tricky it must have been for the prop department to assemble that? Well, obviously they cheated a bit and used a little bit of adhesive, because when the cards come tumbling down, a few of them remain stubbornly stuck together. Architectural faux pas. Mike is an architect, so you'd think his house would have been pristine, right? Well, in a couple scenes, you can clearly see a few tiles are missing from the end of the raised brick entryway to the family home. Maybe the boys simply chipped them off while playing sports in the house again, or maybe the prop department forgot to apply the tiles. Those seatbelt close-ups. In 1968, Title 49 of the Motor Vehicle Safety Standard went into effect. This federal law required cars be built with seatbelts. To encourage the use of seatbelts, the Brady Bunch threw in a couple of extremely close shots of the Bradys buckling up their belts in the episode Tiger Tiger. The Bradys constantly changed their phone number. It makes sense why no one ever called Jan for a date. Her home phone number constantly was changing. In the early episode The Babysitters, Carol calls home while at a restaurant by dialing the number 222-1116 on an old-school rotary payphone. In the episode The Not So Ugly Duckling, Jan tells the operator her home phone number is 762-0799. In the episode Mail Order Hero, the number is changed once again to 555-6161. A Peanuts cameo. A girl with a black wig steals the show in the episode Will the Real Jan Brady Please Stand Up? However, if you pay close attention to the party scene, in the back of the house a young schoolgirl named Lucy is present. Her character, played by actress Pamela Ferdin, was given that name because she voiced the character Lucy in several Charlie Brown animated TV specials. Jan didn't look a thing like her aunt. You have to feel a little bad for Jan. She was always misunderstood and constantly getting screwed over. In one episode, she took a break from resenting her sister Marcia to having a little breakdown over the inevitability of her eventually growing into an ugly adult. When the family was cleaning out the house one day, Jan discovered a black and white photo of herself that she assumed was probably taken within the last couple of weeks. Perplexed by her find, Jan asked her mother about the photo. She then learned the person depicted in the picture was her Aunt Jenny. Jan then wrote her Aunt Jenny requesting a current photo of her. She ended up getting one back and discovered her Aunt Jenny is the epitome of what she finds unattractive. She had bright red hair and broad features, which obviously Jan resembled very little. The actress's likeness, who was used for the photo, was the legendary Imogen Coca. Thinking she would grow up to look like her aunt, Jan proceeded to throw a fit. The episode was meant to teach children a vital life lesson about how character is far more important than looks. But for more mature viewers, the real issue was that Eve Plum and Coca looked nothing alike. The house's historical significance. The Brady Bunch house is a living testament to a time when television was rapidly becoming the centerpiece of American family life. Built in 1959, this split-level home became an emblem of suburban America, representing a blend of mid-century modern architecture with the traditional family values that the show itself championed. When the Brady Bunch first aired in 1969, it introduced viewers to a blended family navigating the challenges and joys of life together. The house, with its familiar exterior, became synonymous with the show, serving as the backdrop for the opening credits and many exterior shots. Its facade, with its A-frame design and large open windows, became instantly recognizable to millions of viewers. The lush lawn and the iconic swing set in the backyard further solidified its place in television history. However, there's a fascinating duality to the house's fame. While the exterior became one of the most photographed homes in the U.S., the